some point in time, we'll get the clip and we'll do the fade ourselves, so we don't have to worry about fucking our own manual. But for this week, let's just make it manual.
Actually, I don't need to do any monitor report anymore, so
No,
it's all good.
you got the Murph man on the monitor.
Your internet seems to be your machine's not in your device. Switch them on. This is downloading anyway. This is taking forever.
Plug your phone in as a USB device, we can mount the drive and copy it from Frank's hard drive.
Yeah. And joining me today is Jason and Dean for the 26th June 2016. We are broadcasting from the...
Well, first up, it's a live show, which is exciting. I'm looking forward today. Douchebag filter news that I have are
I didn't make it into the second season.
fucking amazing. But season 3 was not as good as 1 and 2.
The main character's backstory as to why she went into prison. It seemed really over the top premise for her to be going to jail. I was like,
Look, she develops. You're not supposed to like Piper, I don't think. I certainly don't. You feel it's supposed to be that much of a likable character, but the ensemble cast around is great. And the 4th season has this race war going on, which is just fantastic.
well, it wasn't so much more the credibility of a backstory just seems so regular crime. Why was it just seemed really, don't know. Yeah.
I'm just going to be off mic for a minute. This is not happening, so you guys carry on. Broadcasting, but I'm not fucking seeing anything on this end.
So that was my douchebag filterage. I strongly and if you can make the full season, it's like I said, there's a bit of race war going on, which makes it enjoyable.
Okay, so is it you trifecta of races, African Americans, Latinos, and white supremacists?
Which
Okay. I'm gonna pose a technical question to Jason, who's technically journey with Battlestar Galactica. And I've been quite surprised by what I've been experiencing with the show. Obviously, when you to at some future date watch the show without having spoiled, just tune out for a little bit. Watching Sci-Fi, TV series, you don't expect it necessarily to have high-level drama.
Certain B-grade level script writing.
However, I've been quite impressed if I did that in contrast to, certain shows like The West.
Because I don't know exactly what Battlestar though.
Yeah.
So hopefully he's sitting there trying to work out exactly what it is he wants to do. It's what laurels are for.
I'm not sure what laurels are for.
Well,
Making the sort of investment you need to on a risk. I don't know if it's necessarily that, but more that.
I think when he's facing oblivion, you damn well do whatever vice you
Well,
want.
all I'm saying, maybe he should move his actors onto vaping.
Sci-fi tenets
Some sort of fucking toast.
of a new alien every week, lots of explosion.
I brought this up before. I think it was Humans. They have that, like the British one.
Yep,
they bring on that. So I think it'll come along.
I haven't really been watching much TV last week. Managed to find a way to watch Game of Thrones, and that's about it. Can we talk about Game of
No,
Thrones?
we
Franco?
cannot. I have not seen it. Oh, actually, I don't really care. I've got an inkling of what's
It was. He didn't watch it. I was facing
right.
it.
I'm not that big comment. It's okay.
It was an interesting.
Although Australia, the most recent episode of Game of
Switch off.
Thrones, once again, tune in.
Maybe okay, because I'm not sure this is going live anyway. It was a good episode, but I found the whole battle scene a bit, I don't know, just Deus Ex Machine.
Yeah, I really miss a lot of the book that they could have done, if even this season. And there were certain scenes like the ones with Tyrion and Marine drinking wine, and that footage, you've been like, this is shit.
It is a bit weird.
And then shoot some extra stuff.
If you want to go down that story arc, you're going to have to invest a lot more time to really. But, a minute and a half for a whole, issues and make a full story. Tyrion making this connection.
They do. They have a vision of what they want to achieve, but they don't have the next season necessarily planned. So they sort of rush certain people's stories ahead. Like they did this with Arya to a point where she was in Bravos doing what seemed like fuck all ultimately for a year and a half. And then they're like, and she's just going to go home. And what? Like they didn't plan that out. And same with getting Tyrion to where he was in Marine. They went, we get Tyrion here, and then we're done. Oh fuck! Now what's he going to do for a whole season? We've got to pay Peter Dinklage to do something.
To be fair, Arya's story would have usually been reduced to a montage in a movie or something, wouldn't it? It would be like her training and becoming a badass, and that was it.
There were definitely bits that I felt where it could have been done better. I
would have. With the Tyrion story arc in Marine, I would have liked to have seen them explore, not necessarily him making connections with the ex-slaves, but him struggling to keep the city together in the more machinations of it, rather than over, oh no, the Maesters have come to take us over again.
See, I think they should have just made that siege longer. Actually had it as a longer siege. Like the ships show up, they're trying to negotiate with them, negotiations fall apart, the ships start launching. The same thing happens with the ballistae on fire launching in the city, and just draw that siege out a bit more and have him bond with Grey Worm and that as they're trying to defend the city from the siege that they can't deal with.
Whereas it makes it look, Tyrion looks like he's on a European vacation. Oh yeah, city's under siege, but he's not really showing that stress level that you'd expect someone showing.
No, this is a guy who's been through this, so he's seen it before.
And the same kind of thing bugged me with the plot in the North. Guys who were likeable, so it's like he's definitely going to be the guy who.
Yeah, I mean
it would have been an easy plot element.
What was his name?
Just like
John was his name.
Small John.
I mean, he had the best line in that whole episode.
Yeah,
where he's pretty much tussling with Ramsay.
Yeah, I'm not going to bend the knee. I'm not going to pledge loyalties. It was almost obvious they were going to do it, and then they just didn't do it. It's like
they've made a couple of strange choices in for example, to escape and that kind of thing. You know, just strange choices that you feel weren't quite necessary.
So I'm guessing they film lots of extra stuff they don't necessarily decide they're going to go forward with. Obviously, maybe they also protect themselves against a podge of bits that don't always hang together, will create further problems in further seasons.
Yeah, they definitely the butterfly effect when they change little bits of the story and then it ripples through. And if we kill Stanislav in time, like a lot of the chapters are still catching up. Like Jamie and the Riverland Siege of Riverrun, that's all in the books. Like there's two 7 or 8 episode seasons. So anyway, I quite like the episode. Don't get me wrong. Like I enjoyed it. Watching dragons battle out was cool.
Yeah, it was good.
And the beautifully shot that battle in the north, like the close framing of the shot, and this the chaos, and then the horses smashing into it. Like
there was one element that really disappointed me is the fact that they just let themselves get surrounded by a ship forced.
Yeah, they've done that. They tend to just decide they need this event, Arya being stabbed in the gut, to give it a fake cliffhanger, and then the next episode, she's doing parkour, even though the bitch is like jumping and like throwing legs over. It was ridiculous, but I get they're just trying to go for. They seem to be trying to do what Walking Dead does with their ridiculous cliffhanger episodes, we hate anyway.
Yeah.
But it is probably the most popular television show. So
I mean, sorry, you got your audience is pretty much committed.
They're coming back.
yeah, no, and you could have had Arya just get in a lot of trouble. She's thrown herself into a thing just because miraculously don't cause her to be injured. It's just like it breaks the suspension of disbelief. Is the problem I had with it. Anyway, that's enough Thrones bitching for me.
Short, fast, newsy time. All right, I'm ready to rock and roll with a domestic piece that caught my intrigue. Don't know if I'm particularly upset or worried about it, but David Lianholm, independent senator from South Australia, I believe, or...
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's New South Wales, to be honest.
Could be New South Wales. So he originally got on the ticket because the party he's aligned with has cleverly named themselves the
Liberal Democrats.
Liberal Democrats. So a lot of people... assumingly voted for him thinking he was a Liberal. I think he
also got pole position 1. Like
Exactly.
he was the first.
Was
if
the
you were looking
donkey
across
vote.
trying to find Liberal, you were, Liberal Democrats, that must be what I want. Allegedly is what some people say.
So we here on the show have been watching David. He sometimes makes some interesting points and sometimes some silly points.
It is interesting to have a classical libertarian in politics. Like he makes these interesting points around nanny states and around is it the government's role. And it's interesting. And even the points... I'll let you play. You got a clip, don't you? Is that what we're building up to?
Do we have the capacity to play the clip?
Not necessarily.
So, well,
We could
We could definitely make it attempt to try.
we could run it through there.
We haven't really set it up in advance, have we?
No. Or if it's on Franco's iPad, we can run it through there.
All right. Well, I think I've got this good to go. So Australia, we don't have to have you in suspense. I'm going to try technology.
You're going to embrace the majesty of our seat of the pants hodgepodge of technology.
And here we go. Here is David Lianholm's pitch to the Australian public of why they should support him and the Liberal Democrats.
Buffering. That's great. We need to get you an NBN connection, Frank.
That's slowing this down. I'm getting.
All right, Australia, we failed on that account.
Have we?
It's not enough. We're gonna have to, if we record, we're gonna have to download them in advance.
Yes, I
so we
think
can play them
something
back
was wrong
without-
with my... I have a bit of fraudband issues. I don't even have the fraudband. I've just got regular ADSL connections.
That channel's still muted anyway, Jace. So even the buffering issues we experienced there, no one heard any of that.
So let me set this up for you, Australia, since Greg the intern once again dramatically failed to
to
have...
even work a mixing desk.
And I can't even...
It can't be muted. I was getting about 30 seconds of sound.
Okay, well,
I can't even blame Greg the intern on this one. So David Lianholm has released a commercial that I've seen quite a few times on free-to-air TV, believe it or not, where
I'm shocked you still watch free-to-air TV. That's
Yeah, it happens sometime. So what would you imagine David Lianholm would be pitching to the Australian public as to why they should be voting for him? What core issue? If you're going to pick one issue out of the mixed bag of Australian issues, what do you think he's pitching on?
tax rates.
Nanny state stuff.
You're both wrong. Political correctness.
That's nanny state stuff. Nanny state stuff. Look, Jason and I told you this before. We're massive proponents of freedom of speech. I would rather know someone is a horrible prick than have them just be a horrible prick in secret.
But that's put that issue aside.
Then I can't argue the point.
He's pitching to showing people that their freedom of speech is under attack, which is not. There is no political correctness war. It's only in the heads of conservatives who aren't brave enough to say the bigoted things they want and be called out on it.
You should understand, though, that there's quite a correlation between libertarians and right-wing conservative thinkers. Like that's probably his base he's pitching to.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's very much a belief in liberty in whatever they decide to define that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also there's left libertarians like myself who just don't want the government impinging on social stuff.
Yeah,
but hold on, you're free to say what you want. You're not free from consequence from your statement.
So what's his pitch in this respect?
He will defend your right to free speech against political correctness.
Right.
So you're allowed to be a jerk and not have to pay any consequences. No one's going to throw you into jail for saying whatever you say necessarily. But people are going to call you out on that.
Oddly enough, we don't actually have an intrinsic freedom of speech in Australia.
No, we do actually. In the High Court,
there's an
implied.
There's an implied one, but there's no constitutionally dictated sort of freedom of speech. So,
well, the High Courts have said yes, there is now.
Okay,
but the implication of it's now in law that we have an implied right, therefore we have the right. It was a High Court decision.
I don't know how it would hold up though against.
So why is Landhelm getting? I mean,
I'm sure he's pitching for potentially hate speech and vilification.
Well, because
totally cool.
that's an infringement on that. In my mind, is an infringement on freedom of speech.
What's that?
Is restriction of hate speech like that? As I said, I'm quite happy for that hate speech to be out there.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because as I don't want my freedom of speech to be impinged upon, so I will defend others' right to say stupid, horrible shit.
I'm also aware that. Well, I'm speaking from a position of privilege in that I'm a white person.
But I mean,
well, you say that, but did you see how Pauline Hanson had her genetic code decoded and she was 8% Muslim? Or Arabic, I should say.
But what I mean is that I don't suffer the consequences of hate speech being out there against my particular section of the community.
Oh, there are plenty of people out there that hate white men, Jason.
We rarely.
Oh, sorry, the patriarchy, as you represent.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to suggest that people shouldn't be allowed to say what they want to say.
I feel like we're being oppressed, Jason.
My problem here is he's putting into the minds of Australia that a war has been waged against them of this faux existential threat of political correctness. It doesn't exist.
It's the same with the gay marriage. It's like some kind of war on
conventional marriage
and stuff like that, which just doesn't exist. It's just
the status quo is middle class Australia says whatever it wants to say anyway. They're not really too worried about political correctness. They like to rub it in your face that they're going against political correctness, so they're not really held back against it. They like to point it out that in their heads it really is a real threat to them. And then you got David Landhelm saying, this is a nice wedge point for me to get a few appreciated votes. So, Australians hear this and go, yeah, I am oppressed. Yeah. I can't say what I think. You always say what you think.
Yeah, I again think this is just his message to his base. Like, he's going for people who are, like literally Tea Party style libertarians, which is and this is going to, resonate well with them. And I'm thinking, and forgive me out there for the people I'm about to offend, but I'm thinking he's pitching to, simple country folk who, white Australians living on the land who feel like their country's being taken away.
That have felt in some way disenfranchised over the last few decades.
And so I'm thinking, white men who feel like they're losing their equality / all the power they had that was unfairly granted to them in the society we live in.
And the root cause of this is the war of political correctness. It's not about their pensions being slowly eaten away over time, Medicare slowly being sold off, all that. No, it's not that. Not greedy banks.
It's a simple thing that he can talk about without actually having to make any concrete promises to deliver on later on.
Yeah. It's massive. It's easy.
Yeah, it's an
easy pitch. There's nothing to do about it.
Yeah, which in the past was what gay marriage, the fight against gay marriage for the Conservatives was.
I also think it's unlike certain. I'm a Greens voter. We've mentioned this on the show before. Jason's also a Greens voter. We're both biased on this way.
You did vote Liberal once, though.
Shut up. I did. Fine. I voted for Colin Barnett because I wanted a football team in my house.
You need to check your privilege on that.
But. See, one of the things I think that the Greens do, which I find odd, is we release policies as if we were going to win government. like our policy on healthcare, our policy on education, which I know you have to do, right? But Lionhelm represents a very small party with only one senator. And so I think it's good that he doesn't talk about his policies for education policy, for health policy, whatever. He talks about what he's going to try and achieve as an independent senator, essentially.
Yeah.
Which I think is a lot better, because when you look at the Greens, they don't have any way of implementing their policies. They're never going to.
So how does he win the war on political correctness?
Well, he doesn't, but he is basically what he's saying is he will always vote in favour of.
It's allowing a frame for the debate. So he's striking out a far left position or a far libertarian position, which is not necessarily left or right, and then you can frame the debate within those limits. Just like the Greens, I've got no problem with the fact that they can't always enact their policies.
No,
having them in the conversation and letting them set the frame of reference is very useful.
And I think and historically they used to do that as well. I mean, they've obviously established a frame of reference is what is environmentally sound. We're going to defend that first, and that's going to colour the rest of our policies.
It is interesting, for example, with the Greens, now that they think they have the possibility of enacting some of their policies, they've had to rein in and be more conservative in their requests.
On that note, and I'm taking a bit of a sideways steps here. You mentioned the Green Party. I was contemplating, a discussion Dean and myself had in a meeting we were attending is the danger of parties being single-issue parties. Now, the Greens were more or less considered, when they first came onto the scene in Australia, considered a single-party issue. They
radical
were
leftists.
about the trees. And it's interesting to see their metamorphosis over time, how they've become like a broad-based party.
They also had the forethought to pick a colour. You know, the Conservatives have blue, the Labour Party have red. It's good they had the forethought to pick a colour. I like that. Lionhelm, what's he going to pick? Like some sort of a golden lion yellow colour? Is that what he's going to go for?
Yeah, because I imagine there's a certain restriction on the amount of infrastructure you have within a party. When you've got more elected members, you have a larger infrastructure, and you can have individual elected party officials concentrating on certain areas, because it's.
I think you also, the more you get, the more you have to have official policies to keep everyone on point as well.
Yeah,
it's no longer just one senator. My opinion is, it's like, collectively we all agree that this is where we share common ground.
This is our policy on this, and this is the party.
So I think it's interesting to watch the sort of genesis of new parties. I don't know if I think Lionhelm will probably get back in. New South Wales Lib Dems have actually got reasonably good support. Whether they were talking about potentially winning a senator in Western Australia, I don't think they will. And one, I think it was in South Australia and Queensland. The others, I think they can win or have potential to win. But anything that basically keeps the Senate out of the control of Mini Abbott, I'm okay with.
Mini Abbott.
Sorry, Tony Abbott light.
That's interesting that Lionhelm may actually get back in. I mean, everyone was assuming.
Well, the voting counts are halved now.
He's raised his sort of
his profile enough.
His profile enough that people are going to have seen him, and a lot of people seem to have liked what they've seen so far. So
I like what I've seen. Speaking as like a left libertarian, I like what I've seen. I am concerned about some of the stuff he talks about as well. Basically, anything where they start talking about how if you need healthcare, that's a private thing that market will provide. It's like, yeah, fine, maybe it will, but there are a whole bunch of poor people out there that probably can't afford to go into that situation. And do we really want to have a system between haves and have-nots when it comes to healthcare?
Well, you're absolutely right, because he is a libertarian, and their solution to most things is market will provide.
Yeah, and he's that for everything.
And when it comes to basic sort of human utilities,
it's all about agencies. Yeah. You've got your agencies, I have my agencies, and that's how things get sorted out.
That's right.
So that's the bits where I don't necessarily agree with him. But all the social libertarian stuff where, I don't care. If
just
his
less
point,
interference.
Like gay marriage and marriage, it should have nothing to do with the government.
Yeah.
It's a contract between two individuals. We don't care. It's like, you know what? I'm fine with that position.
And that is quite a pragmatic position. That's something I've advocated, that the state should remove itself being a moral arbiter. They should just say it's a contract between two people.
And see, this is again, I come circle with this on pretty much anything they have, which is a social issue, where they go, it has nothing to do with the government. I'm like, damn right, it has nothing to do with the government. And then he's like, healthcare, it has nothing to do with the government. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I get where you're coming from, like, yeah, but
well, no,
I feel like people get taken advantage of.
The healthcare is. I mean, you're talking about public utilities in a way, and things like that. Like marriage is not in any way a public utility.
Yeah, but from a libertarian point of view, that ain't.
Yeah, but we are still talking about the state basically nannying people. Like you're too dumb to work this out on your own. You can't take care of your own healthcare needs. We'll do this for you. And it's like, well,
no, it's more about having a safety net so that because you can't expect the market. Oh, there's a whole discussion.
I know there definitely is, and this is where I don't necessarily agree with Liberal Democrats, and I think you don't either. We have the same issues with them, which is like, man, you've got to look after everyone, and you've got to bring everyone with you, like education, health. electricity, water.
If you're
These are
gonna
not things
participate-
the market
If
provides.
you're going to participate in society, then society has to cover everyone that's participating.
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
All right, who's up next with short, fast newsies?
I have two. They're both Brexit related. Does anyone else have any Brexit stuff?
All I've got is it's just Brexit.
That's good
I
because
just did a little
that's
bit of
all I
reading
brought was
on it.
Brexit stuff.
Let's
So,
just go into Brexit.
Do you want to do the main Brexit story? Because I have three bits I want to talk about. One, Brexit and its impact on Malcolm Turnbull.
Oh,
Brexit, Putin's analysis, which I think is very important. I had a better pun for that. I just can't remember what it was. Oh, Putin it all in perspective. And Brexit, what it means for Scotland.
okay. Well, I'll just introduce it, and you can step into Turnbull. I think.
Yeah, cool.
So, was it yesterday? 2 days ago.
Yes.
The international
The
date
23rd was the vote.
23rd. So Britain quite convincingly voted to leave the European Union.
It was 48-52. It's not that convincing.
Well, in this, when it comes to elections, a 4-point spread is decent.
I know. Well, we talked about this before it all came up. Is that if you have this plebiscite on gay marriage, it comes down 48-52 in any direction. It basically means half the people don't agree with you. It's a fucking shitstorm.
Well, the weird thing about the plebiscite is if it comes down on against gay marriage, I'm saying, well, it's irrelevant and invalid anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. Yeah, and the same is true with this Brexit thing. It's like 48-52. It's like,
Well, so anyway, so they voted to leave the EU, and it means I think by about 2017 is the date when they're going to officially exit.
Brexit.
At the moment, Britain has only been like a partial partner, I guess, because they never really went on the euro.
No.
But there's been all sorts of information floating about what the effect might be. But so far, all I've noticed is that nobody actually knows what the effect of a Brexit.
Well, it's had an effect on David Cameron.
Definite effect on David Cameron.
He staked out his position and did
yeah.
not win.
No, he didn't, and he's resigned. Wow, that was a little bit of a surprise.
I'm not surprised. We talked about this before, and I was like, man, Cameron's the champion of the Remain campaign. If they lose, he'll be gone. And it totally is. And I thought Boris Johnson's going to be the one they're going to put in charge of the Conservatives. I wouldn't be surprised if they do.
well, that is the talk so far. Yeah.
It did leave American politicians dumbfounded. They couldn't quite understand
Well,
the
it
concept
left
of resigning on principle.
It left
Yeah.
establishment politicians and establishment media in the UK completely dumbfounded. They really thought it was going to be Remain. I mean, all the reading I've been done, they're just absolutely stunned.
All of the Conservative papers were saying exit, like the Murdoch and stuff.
Well, yeah, Murdoch.
Yeah, I know, loon.
Yeah,
loon.
it's weird.
But in a way, I like it how Britain is now little America. America seceded, and now Britain's like, fuck you, we're going to do our own thing.
And they got another person with bad hair stepping up to
Yeah.
the nation. So how does this affect How does Turnbull come into this?
All right, this is good. Okay. So, Bill Shorten, our man on the ground, made an interesting observation this week. And while it's probably pretty likely that it wasn't him making an observation, it was probably more the Labour Party political strategist. They probably had this observation waiting just in case Brexit happened. But anyway, I think it's interesting. So he came out and he was like, Malcolm Turnbull is a weak man. He's beholden to the right wing of his party. And the disunity which that represents within the Liberal Party is a risk that's just not worth taking for the Australian people. We have seen firsthand what happened in the UK. David Cameron, he was a leader, but he was also a weak man beholden to the right wing of his party. He was forced, against his own beliefs, to put forward a referendum. And it resulted in him providing weak leadership. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It sounds
Yes.
awesome. I just can't see that being ingested by middle class Australia. It's too wordy.
I don't know. It's interesting. I thought obviously it's a bit shortened, so it's going to be a bit wordy. Turnbull's wordier, really. Turnbull's come out and he just said, no need for name calling, Bill. But I think it's interesting because it is a good point. It's very obvious that that Turnbull is compromising on his own principles. Gay marriage, he's reversed his stance. Environmental change, he's reversed his stance. Like, it's very obvious that he is not necessarily being led by his party, and that's the narrative that the Labour's been trying to sell. And now they're able to point to Cameron and go, this is what happens when someone who does not lead their party but is led by their party is put in a position of power.
I think you need what you need, and what I've seen demonstrated in Australian politics is you need a 3-word punchline for when you want to ramble. So when Malcolm Turnbull rambles, he's always slotting into his ramblings jobs and growth, or on the topic of immigration, stop the boats. So he can ramble for 2 minutes. As long as he inserts stop the boats, ping, that's when the middle class Australia goes, oh. So when Bill Shorten makes this analogy about David Cameron, what's happening in the UK, he needs that to insert that 3-line punch. I don't know what that is,
Yeah.
Malcolm Turnbull's weak, blah, 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 blah. Malcolm Turnbull's weak, blah, blah, blah,
David
blah, blah.
Cameron, pig fucker.
But the reading I've been doing around it is they did say that the result and Cameron's resignation has totally disclosed the massive division within the Tories in the UK, and it'll be interesting if this will disclose a similar division within the Liberal Party.
It's very obviously there's a massive division within the Liberal Party as well. Like they don't. I mean, at certain things like the plebiscite still being on the cards, that's lunacy. It's lunacy. It's only being done to satisfy the very conservative Christians within the Liberal Party. Our current lack of environmental policies, the insistence from Australia to the United Nations that they do not mention the bleaching of the Great Barrier Reef or the damage being done to Kakadu. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on where it's like, man, you guys are going to fracture.
Well, hold on. Didn't the world's best minister fix the Great Barrier Reef?
I'm sure he has.
Yeah, it's
I'm sure
not a concern.
Well,
for the UN
between
anymore.
Greg Hunt and Chris Pine, the fixer, I'm sure they've got it taken care
He
of.
fixed it. They dredged a great big channel through it.
Yeah.
Well, they did some fancy paperwork with the UN.
Yeah.
Aren't they literally painting some parts some of the tourist
no,
areas?
really?
Yeah, I think I heard something like some of the bits that are particularly on show, they're actually painting some of these areas and stuff like that.
Chucking up a few signs saying, all fixed.
That's so wrong.
So anyway, back to Brexit. Where were we?
Oh, well, I want to do Putin. Can I do Putin?
Go Putin.
But step into Putin.
So this is Putin in perspective, a new segment on the BAP. I would love to get his thoughts on everything, but So glorious President Vladimir, while at a conference in Uzbekistan, the best Stan, he was asked what he thought about Brexit, and he said he thought the situation was pretty understandable. He noted, firstly, no one really wants to feed or subsidise the weaker economies in Europe. And secondly, it seems evident that the people of the UK are not happy with the government's resolutions to the security issues they've been facing. Things have been deteriorating sharply on the back of a strong flow of migrants. Racism, winning. And finally, he noted that the vote to leave was the result of nothing other than arrogance and a superficial approach to the issues undertaken by the British leadership. They've failed to address all these issues that are vital to their country and that are vital to Europe as a whole.
Hold on. You mentioned,
Boom! He put
mentioned
that in perspective.
You mentioned the criticism about defence. Wasn't the Russians sending strategic bombers past the island? Isn't that a bit cheeky of him claiming about the defence?
The dangerous thing there is Putin's actually nailed it. I mean, most of the reading I've been doing around it, they're talking about there's this superficial layer of bigotry in that everyone was quoting and saying it's just these bigots that have voted the other way. But they're completely ignoring a large chunk of the people that simply were disillusioned with the elites and how they were handling things and completely anti the establishment of the EU.
It was 33% of the Labour voters in the UK voted in favour of exit, which is enough to get Jeremy Corbyn having to defend his own leadership now.
Yeah. So there's been talk around that, obviously. But so Putin sort of nailed it. I mean, they've been talking superficially about racism and bigotry and completely ignoring the underlying issues with the EU that people had legitimate issue with.
Well, I've been hearing a lot of chatter about how, under Blair and I forget the name of the leader that followed him, and about how they
David
moved
Cameron.
the Labor Party more to the centre, sort of, and starting to abandon and ignore their base.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a reaction to that.
Yeah, look, it's interesting to see. I think Corbyn, he had a massive support amongst the Labour Party when he got voted in nearly just over 12 months ago. So I can't see him losing his leadership over this, but I'm glad that Cameron's going.
Well, because, I mean, Corbyn was obviously pro-Remain, but there's a large contingent of leftists within the Labour Party that are legitimate leftists that were against the EU neoliberalism that was being implemented.
Yeah.
So, I mean, by him being in the Remain, he's kind of lost a little bit of his own relevance, I guess, in that situation. That's why he may be up for his own challenge. Yeah.
It's got to be tough, I think, for a former empire to accept being a small part in a greater whole. Like, there's probably a lot of older Britons who remember fondly the glory of the empire, the Commonwealth, and the position of power Britain used to have and supreme relevance. And then within the EU, they've always resisted, just becoming a part of the EU and changing the currency and just,
They did the bare minimum they could.
Yeah, they've just dragged their heels. They've had an anchor behind them as they've been dragged towards it. I don't want to do this, don't want to do this. And so it's interesting to see them pull out.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing to bear in mind is they've been suffering under austerity for nearly 10 years. And this was the perfect opportunity to point out it's the EU's fault.
Yeah. And they lost...
Not that there's necessarily a correlation, But, it's always when you can point at someone that's the cause of your problems, you're going to get a groundswell of support behind that.
Yeah. And their own working class outside of London saw a lot of the manufacturing leave and things like that. Jobs just leave because of cheaper opportunities in other parts of Europe. They saw these things happen, and the promise of this. They obviously, while Greater London was experiencing a massive influx of wealth and things like that, the rest of England wasn't seeing it.
Yeah, and Greater London voted pretty heavily in favour of staying.
Remain, yeah.
But the rest of England voted pretty much against.
Because the financial industry really wanted to stay.
Yeah, the financial industry was loving it.
They must be suffering because they lost 30% of the pound
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
Well, the other thing to bear in mind is that we quoted that it was like a 48-52 split. But that's the average across the country. You had wild swings depending on what part of the country you're in.
Yeah,
So
like
you-
London
you definitely
remained
do.
heavily, and then
up
outside
and
of
north
London.
was strongly in favour of exit.
Well, I'm going to talk about Scotland in a bit as well, because they were very heavily in favour of staying.
Well, yeah, Scotland was. We'll step into Scotland now, I guess.
Cool. Well, so I have my family heritage ultimately is Scottish, so anything that involves Scotland, it appeals to me. But the most interesting part of the Brexit vote for me, I thought, was potential this means for a second Scottish referendum for independence. Because while the UK as a whole were narrowly split across the issue, Scotland voted 68% in favour of remaining. All of Scotland, not like just Edinburgh, and like the whole of Scotland was like, we're in.
That's interesting.
Well, they originally voted to stay in for a lot of economic reasons because they felt if they left, the UK and obviously the greater EU, that they would have faced significant financial hardship. So obviously this is a case in point. Well, hold on, we only stayed in because, being a part of a bigger market and that bigger market again, the EU. But hold on,
Yes.
the UK's ditching the EU.
So now there's an overwhelming feeling within Scotland that they're basically being dragged against their will out of the union they voted to stay in. So the Scottish First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has gone on record saying that the second referendum is highly likely, and because there has been a significant material change in the prevailing circumstances since the 2014 referendum. So the Scottish Cabinet is meeting, they met yesterday. So this weekend, they've called the Cabinet back to have a chat, and there will be an announcement on Tuesday as to what the action is that they're going to undertake. Meanwhile, there has been talk within the European Union itself of allowing certain regions of the UK to stay in the Union if they want to. So while the EU is perfectly willing for Scotland and Ireland to secede from England, because Ireland as a whole is talking about unification because they also voted predominantly to stay in the EU. So your heritage is also fine with this, Murphy. So what they're talking about, the other option is potentially to have a reverse Greenland situation, which I was not aware of, but as it turns out that Denmark as a whole, the Denmark Parliament actually the Danish Parliament counts for Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands, but only Denmark is a member of the EU, while the other two currently don't want anything to do with the Union. So they're talking about potentially allowing England to have that kind of a role.
The only one that's kept their own currency other than England as well? I
think they would have to if two of them are not members.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I'm just seeing this now in a rather sort of conspiracy-minded sort of way, but, Germany's the chief member of the EU, right?
And France.
Now
the cheese eating surrender monkeys
as well, but let's face Germany's calling the shots. They're going to get Scotland and Ireland for free, and they never got that during World War II, did they?
I know, yeah. But I think the most interesting part of this for me is obviously there's a long talk about Scotland not knowing what to do because all these unanswered questions. If we leave the UK, what do we use for a currency?
As you were saying, that was the argument they were making for them to stay, and now they're be part of this greater whole, and it's so beneficial.
Yeah. And apparently the Scots have been meeting with the European Union members to try and talk this out. Like, can we stay? I don't know what England's going to do about that.
How's that going to work? I mean, as if there's not so many unanswered questions at the moment as to how things are going to work, but with separate.
Because obviously
parts
England's
of the UK,
going to take a while to do their withdrawal. So if Scotland's like, hey, can we stay? Just as we just all agree. And then we're going to sort out our referendum within our own time. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a second Scottish referendum for independence.
Well, it makes sense. There seems to be ample justification for it now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if potentially the United Kingdom is not so united as a result of leaving the EU.
And I remember following the Scottish referendum, and they chose to remain for very pragmatic reasons. I mean, they're very passionate about their national identity.
Yep.
And if if the economic concerns went so much in the forefront, I think they would have all voted to secede.
Yeah.
But because they were pragmatic and go, look, at the end of the day,
it's better to be a part of the EU and part of the whole.
The greater economies. Now, this just throws it all into the open.
Yeah, well, obviously Northern Ireland themselves are staying in, so they're obviously reaching out to their Southern Irish brothers and saying, Unification?
The Northern Ireland situation is a lot more complicated though, because they've got a lot stronger tie back to England.
Yes, but they could just, EU.
Who wants to open that can of worms again? I mean, that's serious.
I've got a little short fasty for Brexit.
Yeah, okay.
Nigel Farage, I believe his name's Nigel.
Nigel, yes.
Nigel Farage,
Farage.
leader of UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party.
Having a good week, apparently.
Having a great week, really.
He was on Good Morning London or Good Morning UK, a Good Morning show in England, I can't remember the exact one, where he was pressured about honouring a supposed commitment that was part of the propaganda of the Conservatives, which basically says, we pay £350 million to the EU a week. We could be putting that into the National Health Scheme.
Yeah.
And now that the Brexit vote's gotten up, he was directly asked, will you be putting that money into
the NHS?
And he said no.
Yeah. This was something that seemed to sum up the debate that was happening around Brexit leading up. You had the Remain side being incredibly dismissive and just superficial in their arguments about why to stay. It's just it's better to be part of a bigger thing.
Yeah.
But not giving
because they thought it was lunacy to leave.
Not giving any real concrete
Why
reasons.
you leave? Leave.
And then on the other side, you had the far right and UKIP being incredibly inflammatory and irresponsible in their promises, saying, racism, the NHS and things like that. And now it's coming out, one of their chief promises about the NHS is just completely bunk. And there's no way they necessarily have to follow through on it. It's terrible, yeah.
Obviously, with their economy contracting, they won't have that money to put into the NHS anyway.
Yeah, well, they'll put into more submarines and Titan missiles.
Well, who knows? I'm really looking forward to how this plays out. It's very, very interesting. Well, I enjoy this. It'll be fascinating stuff. I've got no idea how it's going to play out.
It's nice to not have a stake in it.
It's an adventure into unprecedented territories. Yeah, it's like, man, I'm so glad I live over here.
However, if you'd had the foresight to short the British pound severely...
Yeah. Commonwealth Bank put a suspended online trading in the pound. Because there was a massive rush because the pound was facing parity on the American dollar, so it was a good opportunity for expats over here to start buying the pound.
Wow.
Especially if they're paying mortgages over there and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've got a friend in the UK that was planning on coming back to Australia and may have to revisit that because they may not be able to afford to now.
Yeah. But on the other hand, there might be a rush of people trying to leave as well, so... Maybe there'll be discount flights. They'll be running more flights every day.
So many wanting to leave or simply being kicked out because they're not. They're no longer British.
That's true. Yeah, all those people over there on European passports. I don't know.
I didn't get around to it. I noticed there's a few articles written about expats and what's going to happen to expat British working in Europe and the other way around and that. And there's going to be
every British expat I know who lives here is shocked and appalled at their country.
Yes, but when you're observing this from afar, you never really get a taste or sense of what's happening on the ground there, so they wouldn't have been subject to all the fear-mongering that was going on.
That seemed to be the theme of most of the comments was just how disconnected the authorities were in this. David Cameron, when he announced this, he thought it was a shoo-in to get to remain.
He took a strong lead and turned it into a defeat.
Yes. So, no wonder everyone's surprised. It really did take a lot of people.
It's a real shame you didn't get Hillary Clinton on the team. They got proven losers together.
Even the Leave people have been a little bit taken by surprise going, now we have to follow through on some of these promises and things like that, for example, the NHS thing. And they really didn't have a plan for it. So
yeah, there were people talking about it in the Leave campaign saying, look, if this was a close vote, a 48-52, for example, and we lost, that it would be unfinished business and there would likely be another referendum in the future. And now they've got the win, but by the exact margin they quoted that this would be unfinished business and there'd be another referendum in the future. So it's like, oh.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
Fortunately, though, for Boris Johnson, he came out and said, no, that's nonsense. We're not going to have never-endums, we're going to have a referendum. I was like,
I also heard that this referendum is not the final say on it. It's not necessarily... it would probably be a brave government that would ignore it. However, it's not actually the final binding thing. It's a referendum.
It's true.
It's only as binding as the government decides to make it. But as I said, if they choose to ignore it, it's at their own risk.
Well, you never know. Maybe the Queen will get involved.
Wow.
She might have to.
Maybe this would be a good reason to
get the big guns. Charles, go sort this out.
She could dismiss.
Get your big ass ears out there. Listen to what's going on the ground. Take care of it.
Is that all for Brexit?
That's all I've got on Brexit.
That's all I had. I was just talking around it as well. That's really all I've got.
I'll tell you, the other thing that came up this week that I really love was the fake tradie. We already posted this to our blog. You can watch it there, dear listeners. But my favourite thing about it was all obviously the fake tradie Twitter feed that I put forward. But then the other stuff that came up around, pricing the fake tradies outfit. So they did the Rolex watch and the Pandora bracelet and then the vest. And then, acting class is priceless, which I thought was lovely.
And I did like that fake tradie Twitter account that had some gold on there as well.
Yeah, he's quite a funny guy, whoever's running that.
Yeah, I don't know who. I thought it sounded very Chaser-esque.
Just knocking off for a smoker, getting a pie of choc milk and some investment properties.
And he's goes, someone's asked me to quote on a job for re-establishing his integrity. It sounds like a big job.
Yeah.
I have one last piece. Tell me, gentlemen, what is the link between Eddie Maguire and the recent massacres in Orlando, Florida?
Does it involve Eddie being sexist?
Liam Bartlett.
Didn't he? Because he said Eddie recently in the news suggested drowning a female sports reporter.
Yeah.
So
you know what?
As a Collingwood supporter, I kind of have to apologise.
You know how I was a sort of nominal Collingwood supporter?
Yeah,
I don't think I can be anymore.
Look, the thing about Eddie Maguire is he always says stupid shit. Always.
Yeah. I used to be able to put up with it, but he's just...
Even when he was the host of the footy show, he'd put his foot in his mouth all the time.
I don't know. He's stepping over the mark. So what's Liam got to say about him?
So the Sunday Times' favourite columnist, who we've sort of suggested might be, living the lamb on that little one, waking up on Sunday morning and quickly scribbling out something just to pay the rent.
Pretty much the same way we prepare for the BAP, right?
And, if that really was the case, we could forgive the sort of nonsense that he puts out. And every now and then he gets something okay out there. This time he's gone right off tangent.
Deep end.
This week in Australia, we've had some prominent people who are involved in the Australian Football League making some stupid statements. And we've had all sorts of Australian leaders coming out and denouncing what they've been doing.
It was a charity event where they were being dunked to raise money. And Eddie suggested that they get this reporter involved because she's a well-known sports reporter, and he just thought it'd be funny. And then he made an offhand remark about he would pay an extra $10,000 if someone held her underwater.
Not the right thing to say.
Not the right thing to say. But the thing about Eddie is he wasn't actually advocating violence against women. He was advocating violence against a woman, not all women. Just one in particular who he happens to be mates with. But she said no, it was offensive.
You know what? Just don't advocate violence against anyone like that at all.
Yeah, look, obviously that would be the right choice. But Eddie Maguire doesn't make the right choice a lot of the time.
He's not politically correct.
No. He needs to go to more sensitivity classes. I'm sure he's been to about 50 over the course of his career, but he needs more.
So, Australian rules football is massive in Australia. It's big money.
It is.
And obviously, it's under the microscope as far as the media is concerned. So, anyone, from player to commentator to coach, steps out of line in any way, shape or form, and obviously it's going to get huge media scrutiny.
Yep.
And, this is obviously a chance for prominent Australians to come out and, throw their comments to the fore. It's not unusual. It happens in every sort of circumstance. However, our man Liam, who mentions this week, an overreaction by, in his mind, I don't have an opinion one way or the other because I think this sort of commentary on the AFL is nonsense, so I don't really...
There's a lot that goes on that's nonsense in the AFL.
So, anyway, Liam outlines those two incidents about Eddie Maguire and the coach of Brad Scott, coach of the Kangaroos, fined for $80,000 for suggesting the umpires erred. So he lays that out, talks about it's possibly an overreaction by Australians leaders on their commentary on this.
I think Brad Scott's finding was an overreaction, but keep going.
He pivots. Liam pivots, and this is what he says. Where are the hells of derision and demands for retraction to the 3 Australian Muslim leaders who have condemned homosexuality and offended every member of this country's gay community? That's some pivot.
That is a pivot.
That's taking a left turn.
And then he just starts
right turn.
digging into Muslim clerics who have said horrible and atrocious things. No one's in denial that a lot of Australians religious have issues with the gay community.
Yeah.
But I would even put more forward that Australia in general is not very nice towards the gay community. So, how can you pivot from football, which has its own issues with not being very inclusive of the LGBTI community, and then all of a sudden pointing out just one specific aspect of society where, okay, agreed, they definitely do have an issue in their relationship with the LGBTI community. But hold on, that's prevalent through Australia throughout.
You hear this argument so often. It's we're bad, but those people are worse. And
Yeah,
it's just
what aboutism?
consistently?
What about that guy?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's not relevant. It's
Yeah,
And the way
we're
he's-
having a discussion about your behaviour, not his behaviour. We'll get
the
around
whole
to
way
that.
he's framed this attack on Islamic Australia, once again, I know we willingly admit there's a lot of clerics out there saying bad things about the gay community and broader things in general. However, the problem isn't there. And if Liam wants to do an article criticising these clerics, go right ahead. But don't frame it as Australia's problem. The problem with the LGBTI community being discriminated is because of these clerics. And I'm sorry, it's a bigger issue than just those clerics.
we can find Christian priests that probably say just as bad stuff to some
Everywhere.
extent in Australia. I mean,
in every level of the Australian society, there's prejudice against the LGBTI community.
but it's only the Islamic faith that seems to be deserving of criticism.
The way he's framed his whole article, you'd think there was this mass reconciliation between Australia and the gay community, and they're totally inclusive now. They're getting married left, right, and centre, and it's just these Muslim clerics who are waging
That are
the
holding
Getting in the
out.
way.
last
yeah.
holdouts. Liam, seriously, mate.
It's weird.
Yeah, and it is odd. I mean, interesting. Of this season, early in the season of the AFL, there was a bunch of people who would show up to games. It was a Collingwood game they showed up to, and they got kicked out. And it said they had like a banner that said "Go Pies" in like a medium-sized font, and then underneath it was like "Stop the boats" or "Reclaim Australia" or something, like in a giant-sized font.
There was something about a mosque, I think, in one of them.
Yeah, and then they protested at a bunch of games, and it was like, man, obviously they were just trying to get on TV, but it was like, ooh, geez, that's not a good look. And I mean, obviously the AFL, I think, handled that pretty well. So maybe that was the bridge Liam was trying to cross. Maybe it wasn't. I'm probably giving Liam more credit than he deserves. Keep going.
The other funny thing in the article was that Liam was trying to suggest that prominent Australian leaders, including the Prime Minister, were being held back against criticising these clerics because of Islamophobia.
Oh, the regressive leftist phenomenon, was it?
But his whole article is defining Islamophobia.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So it's the regressive left. If you're not critical enough of Islam, then you're enabling them. Apparently, yeah,
If you don't call it out,
yeah. It's the whole radical Islam.
I mean, if I spent my day calling out everyone who is prejudiced against the LGBTI community,
It's a long
I wouldn't be
day.
able to get anything else done in the day.
You're probably going to run into the next day. And then you have to start again.
Where do we
It's
stop?
never
man?
going to end.
Where do we draw the line?
Again, interestingly enough, I think it's weird how coaches in football, to come back to the original Brad Scott thing, aren't allowed to criticise the umpires. Why? Why should they get fined for that? Why does a club get fined for that? That annoys me. If you genuinely feel you were hard done by in a sporting match or in any arena, you should be able to speak out against that. The fact that the league fines them, bullshit.
It's that free speech thing.
Yeah, but it's bullshit. It's a little bit bullshit.
It's a lot bullshit.
Another thing I wanted to raise is, look, we don't have a good track as Collingwood. We don't have a good track record on the LGBTI support. I think Harry O'Brien left Collingwood because of the way gay people were vilified in the change rooms, and he didn't like Nathan Buckley. So we're probably not a good beacon to society. I think we got a lot better since then. Obviously, there are a lot of nice Collingwood supporters out there, like myself, who big proponents of equal rights. But look, Eddie's not the best front man
that's
for
an
our
interesting
team
question. Is there an openly gay AFL player? Is there any?
that I'm aware of. I think Harry O'Brien or Hertier Lumumba is
just wondering
gay,
if this is
whether he's come out and
Is this
and pronounced
a
it.
hurdle we've already crossed with the AFL, or because I know it was big news in America when there was like the first NFL, the first openly gay.
Gay.
Isn't one of the rounds meant to be inclusive of LGBTI community?
Couldn't tell you.
Well, they have, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean.
I would hope there is. I mean, one of my favourite things is, when they do the Indigenous round and the custom jerseys, Guernseys. I love those. The Collingwood Guernsey from this year was fantastic. I didn't see a custom LGBTI Guernsey. Black and white doesn't include a lot of rainbow colours. Our spectrum's very limited.
I'd also go back to Jason's initial comment at the beginning of the show that it's always a weak argument in me going, this is bad, but look at that, that's worse.
Yeah, what about it pisses me off?
One of the things I see on Facebook quite often is when someone has a grudge against a certain law or something, they go, why are the police prosecuting this? Shouldn't they be after pedophiles? It's like,
Wow.
that's the way to... If you want to delegitimise any other crime, put it in
I
comparison
actually
to
had
pedophilia.
this argument with an acquaintance of ours that when we're talking about the Palestinian issue, and his argument was, yeah, they're treated badly by the Israelis, but you should see how badly they're treated in Jordan. And I'm going like, That's the first time I'd heard that argument. Like, there's other arguments that come out, and I'm like, wow, so it's okay to treat them badly because
things can be bad at the same time. One doesn't suck the oxygen out from the other necessarily.
That's right. If they're being treated badly there, then that's bad too.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I think that might be it.
I think that's it.
I think this was actually a good live show. I mean, I haven't been able to listen to the stream, but it seemed like everything went through. The bars are moving.
The bars are moving, and we just need to see if we can play sound next.
Well, we don't have our exit music either.
Do we have an exit music?
We have an exit song usually on our show. We don't have it this week.
I never
We
listened.
do, but
We're just going to have to say goodnight, Australia.
we're technically impaired for today.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye, Australia. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Just push the stop record and stream button.